You can look at a lot of different ways here on how people are using Base, but I want to hear from you, the data. What does it show in terms of how big Base is actually getting for Coinbase?
Yeah, so Coinbase has always been the most trusted and easiest way for people to access crypto. And I think what we're seeing with Base is the same thing is happening. So in Q1, we saw 8 times more developers start to build on Base, and we're seeing really rapid growth of the number of users who are also transacting on Base. And like you mentioned, they're doing all sorts of things, from payments to commerce to music to gaming. We're really seeing the next generation of the internet be built on-chain on Base.
Jesse, give us an idea of what you're seeing in terms of adoption. I understand developers are building on Base right now, but what numbers can you share with us that show that this stuff is actually being adopted by a wider public?
Yeah, so as we reported in Q1 earnings, we're seeing millions of people start to transact on Base. We really still think it's early in the overall adoption, and we're really looking at this similar to the internet era, where over the next few years, we're going to see people go from pretty much doing nothing on-chain to doing more and more of their daily life on-chain every single day.
Jesse, let me ask you a question. So the $64,000 question really is, what changes in the regulatory framework need to be made before Base can issue its own token, its own L2 token that gets to trade, where the users start to be able to generate their own value and keep value by being a user, right? So we have this whole crypto ecosystem that's been outside of the regulatory framework. You guys are, well, you're often fighting with the SEC, but you're operating as a listed company with regulatory guardrails. What has to happen?
Yeah, so as we've said from the beginning, we have no plans to issue a token for Base. And I think what we're seeing in the broader regulatory environment in the United States is that it's just too unclear for entrepreneurs. And I talk with builders every single day, and what we're seeing pretty consistently is that builders are having to spend more money on lawyers and regulatory guidance than they are to spend on engineering. And that sort of overhead for startups in a country that has historically been known for innovation is really, really bad. And we think that if we don't get that regulatory clarity that we've been pushing for, we're going to see innovation leave the United States and go over shores.
Right. But I guess we had the Fit 21 bill pass, at least the House. It's not in the Senate yet, but the Senate's going to come with their own view. Would something as important as that then allow you guys to say, hey, because there's a tremendous amount of potential shareholder value, locked up in what you guys are doing, and so.
Absolutely, and we're really excited about the shareholder value that Base is starting to generate. As you've seen, it's starting to generate really significant revenue for the business. I think in terms of the regulatory framework, we've seen progress with Fit 21. We've seen progress with state frameworks like the DUNA in Wyoming. And we're really excited to see that mature. And we're confident that as those frameworks mature, we're going to see more innovation from Base and from the broader on-chain economy.
Hey, Jesse, what about the whole issue around staking with the SEC? If there is a larger question around the staking businesses, what does it mean for Ethereum? And what does it mean for the Ethereum network's potential to really grow in a significant way?
Yeah, so we've been obviously working with the SEC on this for a long time. We do not believe that Ethereum is a security, and I think that the regulatory and the courts are starting to clarify that as well. And so what we're seeing for Ethereum is that it's really the beginning of a global on-chain economy. It's creating a new next generation of the internet that's letting creators, that's letting builders do better than they otherwise would have. And so what we're really pushing for is more regulatory clarity in the United States so that innovation can keep happening and we can keep building this future together.
Jesse, one thing that struck me also is that you have the exchange itself, but when you look at Base, beyond the ability for people to build on it, how does it make money at the end of the day? Does it add any financial value to Coinbase, and does it charge anything of the people who are using it or plan to?
So the really powerful thing about Base is that it's a new technology platform. And kind of like the internet transformed the world in the early 2000s, we expect Base and other chains to transform the world in the 2020s and bring about the new on-chain era. And the way that happens is by making it faster and cheaper and easier for everyone to build new things. And when people build those new things, we're going to see an incredible wave of new applications that users are going to use and that they're going to pay for. And Base is the application platform, kind of like AWS, that enables that. So as more applications are built, Base is going to generate more revenue. And as more applications are built, Coinbase is going to be the front door that lets users access those applications. And that combination, kind of both being the platform and being the front door, is incredibly valuable. And it's something that we think is going to generate a massive amount of of value for our customers and a massive amount of value for the business in the next few years.
Jesse, what would you say to somebody who's watching right now saying, wait a second, if we're talking about this being built on Coinbase's ecosystem, I'm kind of getting flashbacks to the 90s era of this walled garden of AOL and the idea that, Coinbase could be the owner of this platform, and that would concern some folks. What would you say to critics out there who say, you know what, I want this to be actually more open and I want to build on something not associated with any company?
Yeah, well, I think this is one really important thing about Base. Coinbase is incubating Base, but Base is an open, global, on-chain economy that's going to increase innovation, creativity, and freedom. And the only way that happens is if Base is decentralized. That's why we built Base as an Ethereum layer 2, so that we can inherit the decentralization of Ethereum. And that's why, from the beginning, we've been incredibly dedicated and committed to making Base as a technology platform decentralized. And so what we're seeing is that hundreds of thousands of users, tens of thousands of builders all around the world are recognizing that decentralization and choosing to make Base their home because they believe that they want to be a part of the biggest economy that's going to ever be built.
But Jesse, isn't that kind of a half step until you guys can launch a token? Because when you launch a token, it really can be decentralized. But until then, it's not really decentralized.
There's a couple different components of decentralization. On the technical decentralization front, we're making really great progress. Base started as what is called a stage 0 rollup, which is a kind of an early stage of decentralization, but we're in process and very close to moving to being a stage 1 rollup. And what that means is we're going to have a really strong level of decentralization that gives guarantees around censorship resistance, give guarantees around having an open platform for builders that let them actually build with confidence. And so that's what we're most focused on. We're focused on making the technology decentralized so everyone can build on Base and know that it's going to be there forever and they're going to have the same access to it forever as well.